Hey, Mikey, did you hear about Chris Cuomo? Apparently some guy called him Fredo in a restaurant. He went full Godfather 2. Let's you want to play that? Well, look. All right. What's everybody's Epstein theory?
Well, I don't have any.
Well, we got to talk about Jeffrey Epstein in a few minutes. Whatever comes to mind.
Well, I think he's clearly an intelligence asset. I think the number one question is, if you're just going to go through order of operations,
explain that, because I think he's an intelligence asset without a doubt myself.
I don't know the documentation on this as much. But I listened to I think Matt Chrisman and Nick Mullen on Mike Racine's podcast,
and I have been listening to TrueAnon.
I need to get to that, but I mean the basic outlines of passports from certain countries that would be difficult to get that are very effective at getting you across lines, and all his money. Like I think the and most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, is who told Acosta that he was intelligence and to let it go, because the answer to that question is that's the lead, right? Like, and you can't just have that dangling out there.
That is the thing that I just want to hit. So even this, yes, I think the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had a used Saudi Arabian passport in his safe is stunningly bizarre. Now, the Daily Beast says he bought it from somebody who already held it. Okay, there's a lot of like things here that you can kind of have answers to, and like, okay, yeah, he could have bought a Saudi passport on the black market, sure. What there has never been an answer and elaboration for is he got a stunningly easy deal in 2007 in Florida for soliciting child rape. And it was not just two-tiered justice system stuff. It was like quick, because again, there's a broader two-tiered justice system, no doubt. But of course, like, this is not, look, he's not getting arrested on some type of financial crime or something like this. This is extremely explosive. This is the type of case that makes careers, and also like, yes, he's incredibly rich and so on, but he was expendable enough. The fact that Alex Acosta said in the transition when he was asked about this sweetheart deal that he just said, I was told he was intelligence and to leave it alone. And that's reported by, I think Vicky Ward first reported that in the Daily Beast, and she's been like the most diligent reporter on this. What the hell does that mean? And then we got to go broader. And I'll just say two quick things. One, any network, and you can look into the apartment he owns on the Upper East Side, the apartment building his brother owned. There was modeling agencies in it. There was a woman who specialized in headshots for underage models. The lawyers' offices were also there. There was one of his former victims who he actually did support in her career path became a pilot. A lot of extremely bizarre, and again, I'm talking about stuff. This is all like reported New York Times, blah, blah, blah. But, I have to say the idea of an island and a social network with so many prominent people from politics, business, and entertainment that you wouldn't have intelligence agencies interested in the very least in blackmail material on one hand. And on the other hand, frankly, to the extent that these agencies are just kind of like, they are here to sort of preserve some legitimacy in the system and what we're doing. They might be on the perimeter being like, wow, this is a child trafficking network that implicates a lot of very powerful people. Maybe we should just be around and keep an eye on it.
And that's something, child predator networks that implicate a lot of people is something we know exists.
We know exists. So why mathematically we know that they're distributed across the population. They would be distributed.
And one quick
yeah.
point, David. And unlike Sam Harris, we don't think that's fundamentally about Christian or Catholic doctrine, right? That's about power and institutions.
God, no, Jesus Christ, no.
So just to clarify, y'all very much are the opinion that he was murdered, and
I don't.
I think he could have committed suicide, but I think
I definitely could, because I can also see a scenario too,
suicide.
where it's like, I mean, it's definitely suspect, and obviously, something happened where he was able to commit suicide,
right?
Or he was killed. Right, that window is obviously.
And I think that conspiracy.
Well, I
is
think
probably
if he
responsible.
was, I think if he was killed by someone aiding him and killing himself.
Right.
Is basically what I.
That's my most likely one. Yeah, unless more reporting comes out, but that seems like the most plausible now.
Yeah.
Because the question too could be that he had, because he did, he had talked about previously that he did have blackmail material, at least to that New York Times reporter, right? And the question,
there's photos that the police said that there are photos that literally say like person X with X.
They found DVDs in a safe that said Young and then a name, plus and then another name.
Yes.
So, and who knows what's going to happen with that in the future? The bigger question is like that could have potentially been out of his hands, in the fact that he couldn't use it for any kind of personal leverage at that point, and recognize that the rest of his days were going to be so miserable, and wanted to orchestrate a way for him to pass on without it necessarily having been.
Well, I mean, he still would have. Look, I mean, the evidence is there, and he's alive. He could say whatever he wants. So I don't know about that.
But I mean, it doesn't matter if he can't use it to get himself out of his predicament, right?
I mean, he could have lessened his. He could have maybe slightly lessened his predicament. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he's clearly. When that came down, he might have
been a person who's done so much that it's hard to really do a plea deal to lessen it.
I don't know. You know what's funny? If you look at some mafia cases, like occasionally the Don rats out the whole organization, or occasionally you have people like, I mean, Sammy the Bull Gravano wasn't the boss, but he was like, had as many, if not more bodies on him than most people in the family. Like, but yes, he probably couldn't have done that because he was clearly. And I mean, that's the other thing on a media, like best practices level, how people still call him like a disgraced financier when it's like, I'm sorry. I think he was a pimp. And I think that being a quote hedge fund manager, I think is a very convenient way to pay for services rendered when you go and you look at old profiles of him, it's brilliant because the press is so credulous. I mean, there's obviously all of the credulousness and disgusting stuff about the actual like stuff, right? But there's even just like the fact that like, yeah, he's a billionaire and nobody knows what he does. Must mean he's a genius. I mean, that's like all part of the context. And I don't want people, and I'm not, yes, he might have killed himself. I would say the second attempt, and my understanding what literally the physical conditions in that prison are, it just seems like, as I say, if I actually had to put money on it, and by the way, what we said earlier, I mean, he literally could have personally bribed the guard. I want to get out of here. Give me a sheet.
Yeah, I'd place
like
a 25%
some money wired to your
that
account.
One.
That's totally something that could happen. However, I liked what Connor Habib said was pretty funny. And Connor, I should say, is 100% he was murdered. And Connor said he had this funny line though, where he said he was watching Crouching Tiger. You guys remember Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? It's an amazing movie. And he was at the theater with one of his, I think he said an ex-boyfriend. And he was watching it. And late in the movie, the guy goes, the way they're jumping off of trees like that no one could ever do that. And Connor's like, okay, so now this is where you get off the ride? Like everything else was okay. And his point was, which I took, was like, okay, global sex trafficking ring, abuse of children, covering up crimes. Like, even if they didn't do it, and we don't even know who's they, whatever, all of that, right? I think that people do, and this is the dialectic about conspiracy stuff, because so much conspiracy stuff distracts people from politics and material analysis, and it gets people in these wild goose chases.
Disempowers,
and it's metaphysical, and And a lot like the Seth Rich one is just fucking stupid. Like all of that stuff is all true. And, you know, Operation Gladio was a thing. The car bombing of Letelier, which wasn't done by the U.S. government, but it was known, you know, by people that the Chileans were going to do it. So I just would say, like, even if Jeffrey Epstein didn't murk himself, I think it is an interesting tick that even after like evidence upon evidence upon evidence upon evidence, that in the frankly the most conservative scenario is just like all of these people and institutions are so blinded by money and influence peddling that we don't even need to speculate. I mean, post 2007, we know in 2015, you know, and so on, that he was back in the center of New York, and with the exception of elected officials, because they have a different media profile, that tons of people, that he was back tight with business. He was back tight with, you know, various sort of people in high society. Supposedly he said himself that he had dirt on Silicon Valley people. Supposedly he told the New York Times reporter that he was going to help Elon Musk at Tesla. So even in the most benign version, it's like a lot of people at the very least don't care, you know. And then if we tick it up a couple of notches, and I think we follow some pretty obvious conclusions about some of the other elements at work here, it's like a lot of these theories, like of Seth Rich and things like that, should be dismissed because they're stupid and they don't make analytic or evidentiary sense. But I don't actually want to be in a position to say that, like, yeah, but so things like that never happen because, you know, there's a limit. It's like they do. I don't know if this is one, but they do.
Yeah, I mean, my exodus from the skeptic, from I think being sort of a skeptic movement kind of guy, started basically when I started looking at what intelligence services had done throughout history. And I mean, to get to the most specific one is like JFK. And you know, I don't know for sure like how I would make the case that was like definitely a conspiracy, but I do know that nobody in the skeptics movement actually addresses like things like Oswald's like connections to intelligence or military or like different the actual stuff. They spend all their time on what happened in Dealey Plaza and ballistics and all this bullshit that frankly, like, a single shooter is compatible with a conspiracy theory in the Oswald case, right? Like, I want to know what he was doing in Japan at the like base that flew U-2 bombers out of there, right?
100%.
Like, and it's, yeah, I mean, that's what I'll say about that. Like, this stuff does happen. It's tough to do, I think. Like, I think some of the criticisms of conspiracies is they would take a lot of people being silent about things are true. But at the same time, we created an agency specifically with the purpose of keeping shit silent. That's the CIA. Right. Like, and it's done that in other countries. It's we have an intelligence service. I mean, if you think about it globally, like one thing you learn about the JFK assassination stuff, and unlike a lot of conspiracy theories, that has delivered results in terms of like making the government cough up files and stuff like that, showing how the national security state works. But you realize that basically spy agencies are sort of how the aristocracy like lived on post like the end of it because of World War II and stuff. Because like George de Mohrenschildt, for instance, Oswald's friend in Dallas. There's a funny clip back when I used to want to do a JFK podcast. Right. And there's this clip of Jeb Bush talking about the importance of metadata. Well, you can connect George de Mohrenschildt with Jeb Bush's dad just by looking at George de Mohrenschildt's phone book. Right. And he was probably like a spy / oil guy that like, right. and Rafael Cruz. But like this is how capital, I mean, frankly, Oliver Stone had it right in that documentary series he had on Netflix that it's capitalism's invisible army. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, you know, I think that this is actually one where, look, if you get totally down it and make it its own thing and we were going to know the truth and all of this, no. But I would not jump to like, yeah, there was this really sleazy guy and, you know, somehow he just like charmed a bunch of people. Like, no, I don't think so. You know, I
I would look into it a little bit more.
But all these sort of like
and also in apropos of this, I believe this is a Franzik reference. In light of all of that, I mean, I think we can all agree that obviously they gave Chavez cancer. Bob Marley too.
I mean, they tried to microdose Castro with LSD.
I mean, that is right. Like you can't. I mean, they tried to kill. They literally tried to kill him with an exploding
multiple
cigar.
times. Yeah.
They tried to. I think one was like he was into scuba diving or something, so they tried to like put like a bomb in like a little rock that he might pick up. Like you can read all of this stuff. Like it's not, But even more, I would say like I find his death fishy, but I think, he could whatever. That one though, I don't need to die on the hill on. But the idea that this sort of understanding of some type of network like this that had a orbit, because again, even if people were innocent and they just went on the plane, they didn't do anything wrong, they just whatever, you're still taking in that metadata, right? Like even if this guy has done, even if this person has done nothing wrong, they were still on this guy's plane. That's power.
That's a signal to every other predator that has dealt with Epstein that this guy's safe because Bill fucking Clinton, sorry for swearing, was on his plane 27 times.
Right.
Yeah, I can go and abuse some children with this guy. This is safe.
Precisely.
And frankly, Bill Clinton has not answered for his culpability there, even if you buy his denies, which are very, very loyally, frankly, just to leave it at that.
Loyally. Well, and it's fun. Again, you go back, this stuff was covered so differently several years ago, but you've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.